everyone, it's Marisa from bumblebeeapothecary.com, and today I'm going to share with you an idea for a really easy and delicious healthy treat that is great for 4th of July, or it can work for really any type of a fun summer celebration. I'm also going to be talking about eating seasonally as well as following gaps during warm weather, specifically gaps intro and getting meat stock in the summertime. First of all, let's jump into this treat idea that I have for you. So it's really easy. You could switch out the fruit to different types of fruit that you maybe like or have available, but I wanted to stick with something red, white, and blue for today because here in the United States we're celebrating the 4th of July and we love anything that's red, white, and blue today. So I have some cream. So this can be either cultured cream. If you were on gaps, it would need to be cultured cream. On or off gaps, it could just be some whipped cream or cultured cream. I actually prefer the more tart and kind of in-depth flavor of cultured cream when it's paired with other things. So delicious, the pairing of sweet fruit with kind of the tart, creamy cultured cream. So that's my preference, but if you were not on gaps and did not need it to be cultured, then you could just do regular whipped cream as well. So let's go ahead and start putting this together. So I am going to kind of prep the strawberries a little bit. The blueberries are good as is, but I want to just kind of thinly slice these. And I have this little, it's like a milkshake dish, kind of use it for a parfait type of a dish. And if you wanted to, you could do like a larger amount in one of those clear dishes where you could see the layers that way, or you could do it individually like I'm putting together. So a few different ways. Basically, I just love the idea of when you can just use things that are naturally already colorful and put them together for a quick, easy treat option. Another idea is that I have a berry tart that I shared on my channel a while back. I think it was on Valentine's Day of this year. And that one has a nut crust. So if you wanted to add another element of texture and do like a nut type of a crust, then that is another idea for a similar type of a treat. So you can just kind of change it up a little bit. You know, there's so many different variations depending on what fruit you have available, what time of year it is, what holiday you want it to fit with, all of those good things. One more strawberry to slice up and then we'll start assembling this. Okay, so I'm going to start by doing just a little bit of the cream in the bottom of the glass for a little layer of white. And then I want to make sure that these strawberries are small enough both to eat easily and to fit kind of nicely into a layer. So I'm going to cut some of these just a little bit smaller. And then just start layering them. So I'm going to do red. And I have to resist the temptation to make the layers too thick because I want enough of them to get a nice look to it. Then I'm going to do another little layer of white, making sure that it goes out to the edge so that you can see the layers well from the outside of the glass. And then I'm going to do some blueberries for a layer of blue, making sure they're kind of visible from the outside. We'll do a little layer of white. And then I'm just going to repeat with those layers red again. And then for the very top layer, I'm going to try to do like a nice dollop of the cream. And then something that's going to look kind of nice that will sort of tie the colors all in. So, something like that, but it could be anything that you want. So there we have it, a nice red, white, and blue treat that could work as a quick, easy, delicious, healthy treat for any kind of a celebration, but this one would fit for the 4th of July. So now let's talk about kind of eating seasonally and, you know, things to consider in the warm weather months specifically, and then we'll talk about fitting that with the GAPS diet too for those of you who are interested in that. So eating seasonally is what people years and years ago did naturally because people lived with a lot closer connection to their food. Oftentimes they grew most, if not all, of their food themselves, and so they're very tied to the seasons. Now, a lot of us are more distanced from that because we rely more on grocery stores and different things like that. There's food grown in other parts of the world, shipped to where we live, so things that wouldn't normally be in season are available in the grocery store. Things that don't grow in our area are available to us, all those kinds of things. And so those are nice, those are great conveniences. But sometimes if you stop and think about the benefits of eating things in season, then you can see how, you don't have to go crazy with it and try to obsess over it or anything. I never recommend anything like that. But just being a little bit mindful about it can be helpful because our bodies go through certain cycles throughout the year where they, for example, in the spring are all about cleansing, detoxing, moving things out. It's a big time of year to support the liver. Summertime is more about eating fresh things, cleansing things, cool things. And then we move into fall and the body is thinking about getting ready for winter. So it's going to be more about eating a little bit warmer, more nourishing kinds of foods. And then enjoying the abundance of the harvest of everything that grew throughout the summer and is now available as well. And then throughout the winter, it's more eating very warm, nourishing comfort foods, lots of broth and stews and meat, warm cooked vegetables with fat, less raw, fresh things because our bodies want to be more supported to be warm and, sustained through the winter. And then we'll have things like our preserved fermented vegetables like cabbage for our vitamin C, and sauerkraut is what that would be, fermented cabbage, and things like that. So if you think about it, it does support the body to think that way and eat that way throughout the year. So right now, at the time that this video is going live in July, the beginning of July, it's usually hot if you're in a part of the world like I am. It is a time for keeping the body cool, so eating fresh things, cooling things, drinking plenty of water. A lot of fresh things are coming out of the garden right now. There's a lot of greens and fresh vegetables. Dr. Natasha, who created the GAPS diet, likes to talk about how animal foods are builders and plant foods are cleansers. And so I find that helpful to keep in mind. So these warmer times of the years are when the body is focused a lot on cleansing and taking advantage of all those fresh, quickly growing things that you can eat. So that's what I like to focus on, is things that are in season in my area as best I can. Again, not obsessing over it, but just being a little bit mindful, like, things that are in season right now do sound the best too. And so incorporating fresh things from the garden, cucumbers, tomatoes, fresh salad, all those types of things, fresh herbs instead of more dried herbs like we would have in the winter, or fresh herbs, bring those into recipes and incorporate them more, things like that. Another thing that's nice to focus on is fruit, because fruit is only in season for short amounts of time usually. So treating it that way as like a treat, it's always the most delicious when it's freshly harvested, locally grown, harvested at its peak instead of, maybe grown a world, on the other side of the world and brought over. It never tastes quite the same. So taking advantage of those times when you have fresh, locally grown fruit is wonderful this time of year. So then, for those of you who are in this boat, let's talk about when the GAPS diet is necessary during the summer, and especially during warm weather, no matter where you live, what time of the year it is, whenever you're dealing with warm weather and GAPS is necessary. And we'll talk specifically about GAPS intro as well in warm weather. So on the full GAPS diet, you have a wide variety available to you, and there really isn't much to change as far as tweaking the GAPS diet to eat seasonally. It's going to be a lot of the same things that I already talked about. So focusing on what's in season in your area, what's fresh, readily available, what sounds good to the body in warm weather, more cool things, more fresh things. That all fits very well with full GAPS and not a problem. So what can be challenging though is the part of GAPS where you need to be having meat stock. So even on full GAPS, we're supposed to be having meat stock at least once a day. So that can be a mug of meat stock by itself. It can be soup with meat stock. Something like that we need to get in still on full GAPS every single day. Not to the large amount that we were having on intro, but still is important to you to have it every day. So during warm months and warm weather, what I like to do and what I like to recommend, because I've been here, when I started GAPS the first time, when I went through intro over 10 years ago for the first time, I started intro in spring. So it was like the opposite of sort of an ideal way to think about eating seasonally, like what I was just talking about, because intro is all about warm, nourishing foods, lots of soup, lots of meat stock, fat. You don't get to raw things until the very end of the intro stages. And so it did feel kind of backwards. I remember thinking that, but I had to do it. And so if you are in a situation where you're thinking like, oh, intro might be good for me to do, but I don't really need to do it right now, like I did then you could think about it that way and be like, okay, I think I'll plan to start intro in the fall. Go through it starting in the fall, be in the winter time, and then it may work out that you're finishing up those last stages where you're having raw vegetables and fruit as spring is coming. So that could work well if you have some flexibility. But if you're like me and need to do intro while it's warm weather, then I'll talk about that in a second. But let's just talk about getting in meat stock in general in warm weather, even if you're on full GAPS. So what I like to do is I like to recommend having meat stock at the beginning of the day, before the day gets very hot. So on full GAPS, you're just having it once a day, so it could be your mug or your bowl of soup. Have it with breakfast. Have breakfast early enough in the day that the day hasn't gotten very hot yet. Get that done, and then you don't have to worry about drinking something hot or eating something hot later when the weather is very warm. So that can be very helpful. I know that there are some ideas that people have out there about making like meat stock jelly, so like a jello type of a thing with meat stock and eating that cool, or popsicles, and that can be okay. I don't love those ideas just because usually when people need GAPS, they really have a lot of important organs that really need to be supported, and one of those is the spleen, and the spleen really loves warm food. It's also a lot more work for our body to digest very cold food, especially a food like meat stock that's meant to be warm. It gives an extra step, and if you're trying to heal your gut, you don't want to give it extra work. So that's why I don't love having meat stock cold. I'm not saying don't ever do those, because if it's like maybe a child who just needs their meat stock and that's the only way that's working right now, then that could be okay. Just plan on working away from that eventually and not staying there. So yeah, so having it early in the day is my best tip, and then you don't have to worry about it so much the rest of the day. But now let's talk about intro, when you're really having meat stock every meal on intro, and what that looks like for warm weather. So again, what I like to recommend is, again, trying to like front load your meat stock intake towards the beginning of the day. So before the day gets too warm, try to have most of your meat stock in so that you don't have to be having so much of it later on when the day is starting to get really hot. So that can be helpful. Again, you will have to be a little bit more relaxed about it and maybe still have some at lunch before the day is too hot. You won't be able to have everything, all of your meat stock for the day in the morning, because that's what, 4 to 6 cups a day for adults, at least for a time, 2 to 3 cups for kids. Just do the best that you can, getting as much as you can in towards the beginning of the day, and that can really help. Some other tips that I really like are making the meat stock gravy. So I have a few recipes up where I have like chicken casseroles and things where I show the process, but what this looks like is pulling all of the skin, the fat, the soft connective tissues off of your chicken after you've made meat stock with it, and then putting those in a blender with a little bit of meat stock. I like to add some extra fat like butter or ghee, salt and pepper, some herbs, and then blend that up into a gravy, and that has all those wonderful benefits, the collagen, the fat. It's just like having meat stock, but it's in a different form. So sometimes that can feel better for having a meal. So you could be making that with your meat and vegetables and having the gravy over it. Sometimes that's easier to eat than drinking a hot liquid in warm weather. So that might be a tip you want to try. That way you'll still be getting those benefits, but not drinking so much hot liquid. So the GAPS gravy is another tip. And then besides from that, to some degree, there isn't really getting around what GAPS intro is, because it is the soup diet, right? And meat stock is doing the bulk of the work, sealing that leaky gut so that the symptoms can be gone. And so to some degree, there's no really getting around it. So like me, I just did it because I needed it and the benefits were there. And so it's worth it, even though it feels kind of backwards and to be eating hot soup in spring and summer and things like that. But you get through it and you find out how worth it is, and it's fine. And then as you progress in your GAPS journey, then you can shift to eating more seasonally once you're on later intro stages, and especially full gaps, like I said, which is usually typically what the bulk of someone's journey on gaps looks like. Then you can shift to eating more seasonally, and then it becomes all good and it all works out nicely. Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed this treat idea. I hope that you give it a try. Hopefully you enjoyed those tips on following gaps in warm weather, getting meat stock in warm weather. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have more video ideas for me, be sure and leave me a comment. Also, let me know where you're at in your real food wellness journey if you are on one. Be sure and check out that description box for links to free ebooks and other goodies. I also have some new meal plans down there that you'll want to check out. If you did like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with anybody else you think would find it interesting or helpful. And if you're new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I get out new videos every week on nourishing recipes and natural living. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.